Welcome, dreamer. Tonight, we drift far into the starlit realms of ancient Greece, where legends walk the earth and gods watch from high above. Let your mind slip softly into myth, where shadows hold stories and heroes bear the weight of the world. This is the tale of Hercules, the son of Zeus, whose strength was matched only by his suffering. Rest easy now, and let this journey carry you deep into sleep. High above Mount Olympus, Zeus gazed down at the mortal realm with eyes like lightning. His heart yearned for Alcmene, the beautiful queen of Tiryns. Her grace and virtue outshone all mortal women. The king of gods descended from his throne, thunder rolling in his wake. His love would spark a legend that would echo through eternity. The fates had already begun to weave their tapestry. Destiny stirred in the heavens above. A hero's tale was about to begin. The world would never be the same. Alcmene walked through her palace gardens, unaware of divine eyes upon her. Flowers bloomed brighter in her presence, as if nature itself recognized her beauty. The evening air carried the scent of jasmine and roses around her flowing robes. Zeus took mortal form, appearing as her beloved husband Amphitryon. His deception was complete, his disguise flawless. In that stolen night, a child was conceived. A child born of God and mortal woman. The greatest hero the world would ever know. Love and trickery had forged a legend. When Alcmene's time came, the very earth trembled with anticipation. Lightning danced across cloudless skies as her labor began. Zeus proclaimed that the child born that day would rule over all descendants of Perseus. His words rang through Olympus like a divine decree. But Hera, his jealous wife, had heard every word. Her eyes blazed with fury and wounded pride. She would not let this mortal child claim such glory. Her vengeance was already taking shape. The queen of gods prepared for war. Hera's rage consumed her like wildfire, burning away all mercy and compassion. She called upon Eilithyia, goddess of childbirth, with cruel commands. The goddess was to delay Alcmene's labor until another child was born. Eurystheus, descendant of Perseus, would claim the prophecy instead. Eilithyia flew down from Olympus with reluctant obedience. She sat cross-legged outside Alcmene's chamber, hands clasped together. Her magic bound the birthing process in divine chains. Alcmene's agony stretched through endless hours. Hera's first trap had been set. Galanthus, Alcmene's loyal servant, witnessed her mistress's unnatural suffering with growing alarm. The birth should have come hours ago, yet the child remained trapped. She noticed the strange woman sitting motionless outside the chamber. Divine power radiated from the figure like heat from flame. Quick-witted Galanthus rushed out crying that the baby had been born. Eilithyia leaped up in shock, her concentration shattered. The magic binding dissolved in an instant. Alcmene's cries echoed as labor resumed. The servant had outwitted a goddess. With a final cry that shook the palace walls, Hercules was born into the world. Thunder crashed overhead as Zeus celebrated his son's arrival. The baby's eyes blazed with divine fire, and his tiny hands gripped with impossible strength. Alcmene gazed upon her child with wonder and terror. She could see the godhood burning within him like a second soul. The midwives whispered prayers and blessings over the miraculous infant. Even as a newborn, power radiated from every breath. The greatest hero had drawn his first breath. Destiny had taken flesh and blood. Hera's fury knew no bounds when news of the birth reached her golden ears. Her first plan had failed, but her hatred burned stronger than ever. She would not be denied her revenge against Zeus's bastard child. The goddess began to weave darker schemes in her mind. If she could not prevent his birth, she would ensure his death. Her divine wrath would follow him every day of his life. No peace would he know while she drew breath. The war between goddess and hero had begun. Hercules would pay for his father's sins. Alcmene held her son close, sensing the divine power flowing through his tiny form. She named him Alcides, though the gods would call him Hercules. His strength was already beyond mortal understanding, his grip crushing stones. Amphitryon returned to find his wife nursing a child of impossible might. The truth of Zeus's visit hung unspoken between them. Yet he accepted the boy as his own son. Love conquered confusion and wounded pride. The mortal man would raise a god's child. Honor demanded nothing less from him. Word of the miraculous birth spread through the kingdom like wildfire among dry grass. Seers and prophets came to glimpse the child of Zeus with their own eyes. They spoke of great deeds and terrible trials that awaited him. Some saw glory beyond imagination in his future paths. Others whispered of suffering that would break lesser men. The baby listened with ancient eyes, as if understanding every word. His destiny was being written in mortal tongues. Already the weight of legend pressed upon his shoulders. Greatness and sorrow walked hand in hand. Alcmene tried to give her son a normal childhood, but his strength made it impossible. At 6 months, he crushed a bronze toy soldier to powder in his fist. His laughter shattered ceramic vases across the nursery walls. Servants feared to handle him, and nurses quit in terror. Only his mother's love could calm the divine fire burning within him. She sang lullabies of heroes and gods to soothe his restless spirit. The songs seemed to reach something deep inside his soul. For brief moments, peace would settle over the supernatural child. But the storms always returned with the dawn. Hera watched the growing child with eyes full of venomous hatred and cruel patience. She saw how Alcmene's love protected him from the world's fear. That love would become her weapon against the boy. She began to plan her most terrible trap yet. 2 serpents, birthed in the depths of Tartarus itself. Their fangs dripped with poison that could kill gods. She would send them in darkness when guards slept. The infant would die before his first birthday. Her revenge would be swift and final. Zeus would learn the price of betrayal. The night was darker than any before, as if shadows themselves had grown hungry. Hera's serpents slithered through the palace halls like living nightmares. Their scales gleamed with an oily blackness that absorbed all light. Forked tongues tasted the air for divine blood. Guards slumped at their posts, overwhelmed by supernatural sleep. The creatures found the nursery where Hercules lay. They coiled around the crib like liquid death. Their eyes burned with hellish fire. The trap was about to spring. The serpents rose above the sleeping infant, fangs bared for the killing strike. But Hercules awoke with eyes blazing like small suns. His chubby hands reached out without fear or hesitation. Divine strength flowed through muscles still soft with baby fat. He grasped each serpent behind the head with perfect precision. The creatures thrashed and writhed with incredible fury. Their coils wrapped around his arms like living chains. But the child's grip was stronger than steel. His laughter filled the room as he squeezed. The sound of divine joy rang through the darkness. The serpent's struggles grew weaker as Hercules tightened his impossible grip. Their supernatural scales began to crack under the pressure. Poison leaked from their fangs onto the nursery floor. The baby giggled as if playing with harmless toys. His strength was beyond anything Hera had imagined possible. The creatures that could have slain grown gods died in an infant's hands. Their bodies went limp, necks crushed to powder. Hercules dropped them and clapped his hands with delight. His first victory was already written in the stars. Alcmene rushed into the nursery, drawn by her son's delighted laughter and strange sounds. She found the dead serpents coiled around the crib like broken necklaces. Their massive forms spoke of supernatural origin and deadly purpose. Her baby reached up to her with innocent joy. No fear showed in his divine features. She lifted him with trembling hands, understanding what had occurred. Hera had tried to murder her son in his sleep. But his strength had already surpassed his enemy's expectations. The war between them had truly begun now. Zeus felt his son's triumph from the heights of Mount Olympus. Pride swelled in his godly heart like morning thunder. The infant had defeated Hera's assassins with bare hands. His divine blood ran true and strong. But the king of gods also felt deep concern. Hera's hatred would only grow stronger now. She would never forgive this humiliation at a baby's hands. More trials and dangers would surely follow. He could not intervene without provoking greater wrath. His son must face destiny alone. The price of being Zeus's child had begun. Hera's scream of rage shook the foundations of Olympus itself. Her serpents had failed, her vengeance thwarted by an infant. The other gods cowered before her unleashed fury. Divine artifacts cracked under the pressure of her wrath. She would make the child suffer in ways beyond death. His strength meant nothing against a goddess's cunning. She began to plot torments that would last lifetimes. Physical power could not save him from madness. Her revenge would be psychological and complete. The real punishment was yet to come. News of the serpent's defeat spread throughout the ancient world like ripples in a divine pond. Seers proclaimed it as the first sign of a legendary hero. Poets began composing songs of the infant's impossible strength. Kings sent gifts and envoys to honor the miraculous child. But wise men also whispered warnings about Hera's endless wrath. They knew the goddess would not accept such defeat. Greater trials awaited the boy as he grew. His victory had marked him for lifelong suffering. Glory and agony would be his eternal companions. Amphitryon hired the greatest tutors in all of Greece to train his divine stepson. Linus taught him music and poetry to calm his wild spirit. Eurytus showed him archery with bow and arrow. Castor instructed him in swordsmanship and combat arts. Each teacher marveled at his incredible learning speed. But his strength made every lesson dangerous for others. Wooden practice swords shattered in his grip like dried reeds. His arrows pierced through multiple targets with ease. The boy learned everything, but remained apart from normal life. Greatness isolated him from mortal companionship. One day during a music lesson, Linus lost patience with his divine pupil's restless energy. The old teacher struck Hercules with his lyre for inattention. The blow was gentle, meant only as correction. But the young hero's temper flared like his father's lightning. Without thinking, he grabbed the instrument and swung back. The lyre connected with Linus's temple with devastating force. The music teacher crumpled to the ground, never to rise again. Hercules stared at his bloodied hands in horror. His first kill had been committed in a moment's rage. The curse of his strength was revealed. The death of Linus brought shame and terror upon the royal household. Amphitryon realized his stepson needed to learn control above all else. The boy's remorse was genuine and heartbreaking to witness. Tears of divine sorrow fell like rain from his eyes. He understood that his strength made him dangerous to everyone. The weight of responsibility settled on his young shoulders. Amphitryon made the hard decision to send him away. The boy needed wisdom that only solitude could teach. The mountains would be his new classroom. Perhaps nature could tame what man could not. In the wild peaks of Mount Scythian, Hercules learned to live with beasts. The shepherds there taught him humility and self-control through harsh necessity. Every movement had to be measured and careful. He learned to gentle his touch like morning dew. The sheep and cattle showed him innocence worth protecting. Months of isolation taught him the value of patience. His strength slowly became a tool rather than a curse. The mountains shaped his character like a divine blacksmith. When he returned, he would be changed forever. Wisdom had begun to temper his power. The young hero grew tall and mighty among the mountain peaks and valleys. His frame filled out with muscle like sculptured marble. Golden hair fell in wild curls around his shoulders. His eyes held depth that spoke of hard-won understanding. The shepherds spoke of his gentleness with newborn lambs. Yet they had also seen him wrestle full-grown bears. His reputation for both tenderness and strength spread far. He had learned the greatest lesson of all. True power lay in knowing when not to use it. The boy had become a man worthy of legend. At 18, Hercules descended from the mountains with a lion's mane flowing behind him. His return to Thebes caused crowds to gather in the streets. Men marveled at his size and presence, women at his beauty. But his eyes held a sadness that spoke of inner struggles. The death of Linus still haunted his dreams. He sought ways to make amends for his terrible mistake. Perhaps great deeds could balance the scales of justice. His strength needed purpose beyond mere display. The hero's path was calling to his heart. Destiny stirred once more in his soul. King Creon of Thebes faced a terrible crisis that threatened his entire kingdom. Erginus of Orchomenus demanded crushing tribute from his people. The minions had defeated Theban armies in previous battles. Now they claimed ownership of the city itself. Citizens sold their children to pay the endless taxes. Hope had died in every household and street. The king's own daughter, Megara, wept for her people's suffering. Then Hercules arrived like an answer to desperate prayers. His strength might turn the tide of war. The hero's first great test was at hand. Hercules stood before King Creon with fire burning in his divine eyes. The injustice of the minion tribute filled him with righteous anger. Here was a chance to use his strength for good. He volunteered to lead an army against the oppressors. The king hesitated, knowing the risk of further provoking urginess. But the hero's confidence was impossible to ignore. His presence alone inspired hope in the darkest hearts. Weapons were gathered and soldiers recruited for the coming battle. Thebes would fight back at last. The lion-hearted hero would lead them to freedom. War drums echoed through the ancient streets. The battle between Theban and Mythical forces raged across the fertile plains. Hercules fought like a force of nature unleashed upon the earth. His club crushed enemy shields and shattered spear points. No weapon could pierce his lion-skin armor. Soldiers fled before him like leaves before a hurricane. His war cry shook the very foundations of the battlefield. The tide of combat turned in Thebes' favor. Erginus himself fell before the hero's terrible strength. Victory belonged to the righteous cause. The people's oppression had finally ended. King Creon wept with joy as his victorious army returned home. The streets filled with celebrating citizens singing Hercules' name. Children threw flower petals from windows and rooftops above. The hero had liberated an entire kingdom from tyranny. In gratitude, Creon offered his daughter Megaera's hand in marriage. She was beautiful beyond description, with eyes like stars. Her wisdom and kindness matched her physical grace. Hercules felt love bloom in his heart like spring. Here was happiness he had never imagined possible. The wedding would be the greatest celebration Thebes had seen. The marriage of Hercules and Megaera brought joy to the entire kingdom. The ceremony lasted for 7 days and nights of feasting. Musicians played while dancers whirled through the palace halls. The bride's beauty rivaled that of the goddesses themselves. Her love for the hero shone like sunlight in her smile. Hercules had never known such perfect contentment and peace. His strength now protected something precious beyond measure. Together they would build a life worth living. Children would carry on their legacy of love. For a brief time, happiness conquered all shadows. 3 sons were born to Hercules and Megaera in quick succession. The boys inherited their father's strength and their mother's gentle nature. Their laughter filled the palace with music sweeter than lyres. Hercules taught them to be both strong and merciful. Megaera showed them wisdom and compassion for all living things. The family seemed blessed by every god on Olympus. Yet high above, Hera watched with growing jealousy and rage. The hero's happiness was an affront to her wounded pride. She began to weave her most terrible spell. The goddess's patience was finally at an end. Hera descended from Olympus with madness writhing around her like living shadows. Her power crept into Hercules' mind like poison in wine. The hero began to see enemies where none existed. His loving family appeared as monsters and demons to his twisted sight. Divine madness consumed his reason like wildfire through drought-stricken fields. Reality became nightmare, and nightmare became truth. His strength turned from blessing to curse once more. The goddess's revenge was finally at hand. She would destroy him with his own power. The cruelest trap had been sprung. In his madness, Hercules saw his wife and children as enemies sent to destroy him. Their loving faces became hideous masks of hate and evil. Their gentle voices sounded like demon screams in his ears. He reached for his weapons with hands that trembled. The lion's strength flowed through muscles driven by divine insanity. There was no stopping what came next. The hero's greatest victory became his greatest defeat. Love was transformed into violence by goddess's spell. The worst possible sin was about to unfold. Innocence would die at the hands of goodness. When the madness finally lifted, Hercules found himself kneeling in blood. The bodies of his beloved wife and 3 sons lay broken around him. Their innocent eyes stared at nothing with terrible accusation. His hands were stained with the crimson of their lives. The weapons that had protected them now bore their death. Reality crashed down upon him like a mountain avalanche. His screams of anguish shook the very foundations of the earth. Hera's laughter echoed from the heights of Mount Olympus. Her revenge was complete and devastating. The hero's heart had been shattered beyond repair. Hercules fled from Thebes like a soul already damned to Tartarus. His crime followed him like a shadow that could never be escaped. No amount of washing could cleanse his blood-stained hands. The faces of his family haunted every dream. Their voices called out from beyond the grave. Guilt crushed him more than any physical burden ever could. He wandered the wilderness for months without purpose. Wild beasts fled from the grief radiating from his broken form. The greatest hero had become the most wretched outcast. Death seemed like the only possible redemption. In his despair, Hercules sought wisdom from the oracle of Delphi. The sacred priestess dwelt in Apollo's most holy temple. Her words came directly from the god of prophecy himself. Perhaps she could tell him how to atone. The hero climbed the sacred mountain with heavy steps. Each footfall echoed with the weight of his sins. Pilgrims scattered before his terrible presence and overwhelming grief. The temple doors opened to receive him like Judgment's gate. Inside, sacred smoke swirled with divine power. The oracle waited to pronounce his fate. The Pythia sat upon her sacred tripod, eyes white with divine vision. Sacred vapors rose from the earth's depths around her form. Apollo's power flowed through her like golden fire. She looked upon Hercules with pity mixed with understanding. His crime was terrible, but his suffering was real. The god's wisdom saw through Hera's cruel manipulation. Yet justice still demanded payment for innocent blood. The oracle spoke in voices that seemed to come from eternity. Her words would shape the hero's destiny forever. Redemption was possible, but the price would be steep. Hercules, the oracle intoned with Apollo's golden voice resonating through the sacred chamber, your crime was committed in madness, but blood still cries out for justice. You must serve your cousin Eurystheus for 12 years. Whatever labors he sets before you must be completed. Only through this service can you find redemption. Your strength will be tested to its very limits. Some tasks may seem impossible even for Zeus's son. But complete them all, and your sin will be forgiven. The hero bowed his head in acceptance. Servitude was a small price for peace. Hercules journeyed to Tiryns where his cousin Eurystheus ruled with petty tyranny. The king had heard of the hero's crime and exile. Fear and jealousy warred in his narrow heart. He remembered Zeus's prophecy about Perseus's descendant ruling over others. Now fate had delivered his greatest rival into his hands. Eurystheus would use this opportunity to destroy the hero. Impossible tasks would break even divine strength eventually. The king's advisors whispered of monsters and dangers. A cruel smile spread across the ruler's face. His revenge would be slow and satisfying. King Eurystheus cowered behind his palace walls when Hercules approached the gates. The hero's reputation for strength was matched by stories of his madness. What if the divine rage struck again? The king had constructed a bronze jar buried deep underground. It would be his hiding place during the hero's visits. From this safe distance, he would issue his commands. Hercules knelt before the palace and awaited his sentence. His submission was complete and genuine, powered by overwhelming guilt. The sight of such power humbled gave Eurystheus twisted pleasure. The labors were about to begin. Your first labor, Eurystheus called from his bronze hiding place, his voice echoing strangely through the metal walls, is to slay the Nemean Lion. This beast terrorizes the hills outside the city. Its golden hide cannot be pierced by any mortal weapon. Many heroes have tried to kill it and failed. Their bones litter its cave like broken pottery. If you truly seek redemption, this will be your first test. Hercules listened without protest or complaint. Impossible odds meant nothing to his determination. He would succeed or die trying. Either outcome offered escape from guilt. The road to Nemea wound through barren hills where nothing grew. The lion's presence had driven away all other life. Farmers abandoned their fields, and shepherds fled with their flocks. An unnatural silence hung over the land like death's blanket. Hercules walked alone through this desolation, carrying only his olive-wood club. His lion-skin cloak rippled in the wind behind him. Each step brought him closer to his destiny. The first labor would prove his worth or end his suffering. Either way, justice would be served at last. The hunt was about to begin. In the village of Cleone, Hercules met an old priest named Melorchos. The man lived in poverty but offered what hospitality he could. His kindness touched the hero's wounded heart like healing balm. They sat by a small fire sharing simple bread. The priest spoke of faith and redemption with gentle wisdom. He promised a sacrifice to the gods for Hercules' success. If the hero did not return in 30 days, the sacrifice would be for his soul instead. This simple faith meant more than all royal proclamations. Hercules felt hope stir in his heart. Perhaps redemption was truly possible. The Nemean Lion's territory stretched across several valleys carved by ancient floods. Bones of heroes and travelers littered the paths like warning signs. Trees bore claw marks 20 feet above the ground. The very air seemed to vibrate with predatory menace and supernatural dread. Hercules felt his divine strength responding to the challenge ahead. His muscles tensed like coiled springs ready for battle. This was why Zeus had given him such power. Evil must be confronted and destroyed wherever it lurked. The hero's purpose was finally becoming clear. His strength had meaning beyond mere display. At sunset, the Nemean Lion emerged from its cave like a golden nightmare. It stood taller than a horse at the shoulder. Its mane flowed like molten metal in the dying light. Eyes burned with intelligence beyond normal beasts. This was no ordinary lion but a monster birthed by the gods. Its roar shattered stones and made mountains tremble. Hercules felt primal fear touch his heart for the first time. But divine courage burned brighter than terror ever could. He raised his club and advanced toward destiny. The greatest battle of his life was about to begin. Hercules swung his mighty club with all his godlike strength behind the blow. The olive wood, blessed by Athena herself, struck the lion's skull. But the beast merely shook its head and snarled. Its golden hide showed not even a scratch or bruise. The hero's strongest attack had been utterly useless. Panic tried to creep into his mind like cold fog. But he pushed fear aside and reached for his bow. Arrows blessed by Apollo's own hand flew toward their target. They bounced off harmlessly like insects against bronze armor. Conventional weapons were completely ineffective. The Nemean Lion charged with speed that belied its massive size. Claws longer than swords reached for the hero's flesh. Hercules rolled aside at the last possible moment. The creature's momentum carried it past him into a rocky outcrop. Stone crumbled under the impact like sand before waves. The hero realized that only his bare hands could succeed. Divine strength would have to overcome supernatural hide. He cast aside his weapons and prepared for wrestling. This would be a battle of pure power. Man against monster with no quarter given. Victory would go to the stronger will. Hero and lion grappled in a dance of death. Massive paws tried to crush Hercules while he sought a hold. The beast's claws raked across his lion-skin cloak without effect. Hot breath like furnace wind scorched his face. They rolled together across the rocky ground, neither able to gain advantage. The creature's strength was immense, perhaps equal to his own. But Hercules had intelligence where the beast had only fury. He began to look for weakness in his opponent's defenses. Every fighter had vulnerabilities if one knew where to look. Victory would require both strength and strategy. The battle raged through the night as both combatants refused to yield. Blood and sweat mixed with dust to create crimson mud. The lion's roars echoed through the valleys like thunder. Hercules's war cries answered with human determination. Neither could overpower the other through strength alone. As dawn approached, exhaustion began to take its toll. The hero noticed the beast's breathing becoming labored. Its golden hide was invulnerable to weapons but still needed air. A desperate plan formed in his mind. He would have to risk everything on one final gambit. The fight would end with the sunrise. With his remaining strength, Hercules lunged forward and wrapped his arms around the lion's throat. The creature thrashed wildly, trying to break free from the crushing hold. But the hero's grip was like iron bands forged in divine fires. He squeezed with every ounce of power Zeus had given him. The lion's struggles grew weaker as air failed to reach its lungs. Its golden eyes began to dim like setting suns. With one final shudder, the great beast went limp. Silence fell over the battlefield like a benediction. The Nemean Lion was dead at last. The first labor had been completed through pure determination. Hercules knelt beside the fallen lion, exhausted but victorious. The creature's golden hide gleamed in the morning sunlight. Even in death, it remained beautiful and terrible. The hero realized this pelt would make armor superior to any bronze. But first he had to find a way to cut it. His sword and knife were useless against the supernatural hide. Then wisdom touched his mind like Apollo's light. The lion's own claws could pierce what weapons could not. He used the creature's talons to skin his defeated foe. Soon the golden pelt was his prize and protection. Wearing the Nemean Lion's pelt as a cloak, Hercules returned to Cleone. The golden hide covered his shoulders like a king's robe. The lion's head formed a hood above his own. Melorchos wept with joy to see the hero alive. They sacrificed together to thank the gods for victory. The old priest's faith had been rewarded beyond hope. Word of the triumph spread like wildfire through the region. Children would grow up hearing songs of this battle. The hero had taken his first step toward redemption. 11 more labors awaited his strength. But hope now burned bright in his heart. Eurystheus nearly fainted when Hercules appeared wearing the golden lion pelt. The creature that had terrorized the kingdom was now his cousin's cloak. Fear and rage warred in the king's narrow mind. How dare this exile succeed where others had failed? The first labor was meant to destroy the hero. Instead, it had made him more formidable than ever. The bronze jar seemed suddenly inadequate as protection. He would need to devise even more impossible tasks. The king's advisors whispered of other monsters in distant lands. Perhaps the Lernaean Hydra would succeed where the lion had failed. Your second labor, Eurystheus commanded from deep within his bronze refuge, is to destroy the Hydra of Lerna. This serpent has 9 heads, one of which is immortal. Each time a head is severed, 2 more grow in its place. The beast guards the entrance to the underworld itself. Its breath is poison that kills with a single lungful. Even the swamp where it dwells reeks with death. This task will surely end your misguided quest for redemption. But Hercules merely bowed and accepted the challenge. Each labor brought him closer to forgiveness. Nothing would turn him from his chosen path. The swamps of Lerna stretched for miles in every direction around ancient springs. Mist rose from stagnant waters like the breath of sleeping ghosts. Dead trees reached toward the sky with skeletal branches. No bird sang in this desolate place of poison and decay. The very air seemed thick with malevolence and supernatural dread. Hercules advanced carefully through the treacherous terrain, feeling evil watching his approach. Somewhere in this wasteland, the Hydra waited in its lair. The second labor would test his courage as much as his strength. Death lurked in every shadow and breath. Iolaus, Hercules' nephew and faithful companion, had begged to accompany him on this quest. The young man's loyalty touched the hero's heart. Perhaps friendship could lighten the burden of his labors. Together they searched the swamp for signs of their quarry. The Hydra's tracks were easy to follow through the poisonous mud. Plants withered wherever it had passed in its terrible journey. The trail led toward a cave mouth that breathed forth noxious vapors. Ancient bones littered the entrance like broken promises. Inside, something huge stirred in the darkness. The monster had sensed their arrival. The Lernaean Hydra emerged from its cave like a nightmare given flesh. 9 serpentine heads swayed on long necks above a massive body. Each head bore fangs dripping with venom. Its eyes burned with malevolent intelligence that spoke of ancient evil. The creature's breath created clouds of poison that killed grass instantly. Hercules felt his skin burning from the toxic fumes. Even his lion skin cloak could not fully protect him. This monster was deadlier than any he had faced. But divine courage overcame mortal fear once again. He drew his sword and prepared for battle. Hercules struck at the nearest head with his blade enhanced by divine strength. The sword cut cleanly through the serpentine neck in a spray of black blood. But his triumph was short-lived as the wound began to bubble. 2 new heads sprouted from the severed stump within moments. Now 10 heads hissed and struck at him from all directions. Each successful blow only made the monster stronger. The hero realized this battle required more than brute force. Strategy would be needed to overcome this supernatural foe. He called to Iolaus for aid in implementing his plan. Teamwork might achieve what strength alone could not. Bring fire! Hercules shouted to his nephew while dodging venomous strikes. Burn the necks before they can regenerate. Iolaus understood immediately and began gathering dry wood. The young man's courage matched his uncle's own. While Hercules kept the Hydra's attention, Iolaus built a blazing torch. The hero struck off another head with perfect timing. His nephew leaped forward to cauterize the wound with flame. The searing heat prevented new heads from growing. Working together, they began to reduce the monster's numbers. Each severed neck that burned meant one less enemy to fight. Victory became possible through cooperation. The battle continued with methodical precision as uncle and nephew worked in perfect harmony. Hercules would sever a head while Iolaus burned the stump. The Hydra's hisses grew more frantic as its numbers dwindled. But the immortal head remained, larger and more dangerous than all the others. Its eyes held wisdom beyond mortal understanding. This final opponent could not be killed by any weapon. The hero realized he would need to find another solution. Perhaps burial under stone would accomplish what blade could not. The greatest challenge of the labor still awaited. Divine cunning would overcome immortal menace. With tremendous effort, Hercules lifted a massive boulder above his head. The immortal head of the Hydra snapped and writhed with eternal fury. Its fangs sought flesh that remained just beyond reach. The hero brought the stone down with crushing force. The immortal head was pinned beneath tons of rock. Though it could not die, it could be imprisoned forever. The Hydra's body writhed once more and then fell still. Black blood pooled around the defeated monster. The second labor had been completed through wisdom and teamwork. Iolaus had proven himself a true hero's companion. Hercules dipped his arrows in the Hydra's poisonous blood, creating weapons of terrible power. Each arrowhead now carried death that could fell even gods. The venom would make his future battles easier to win. Iolaus watched with admiration as his uncle worked with careful precision. The young man had learned that heroism required both strength and intelligence. Together they departed the poisonous swamps of Lerna. Behind them, the monster's lair began to heal from its corruption. Birds would sing there again in time. But the arrows would carry this darkness forever. Some victories required embracing necessary evils. Eurystheus raged when he learned of the Hydra's defeat. 2 labors had failed to destroy his hated cousin. The king's advisors cowered before his wrath like leaves before hurricanes. They suggested increasingly dangerous monsters from distant lands. Perhaps the Ceryneian hind would prove impossible to catch. Or the Erymanthian boar might succeed where serpents had failed. The bronze jar seemed inadequate protection against Hercules' growing legend. Fear consumed the king more than hatred ever could. His nights were filled with dreams of divine retribution. The hero's success was becoming his torment. Your third labor, Eurystheus commanded with barely controlled terror, is to capture the Ceryneian hind alive and unharmed. This deer is sacred to Artemis herself. Its hooves are bronze and its antlers are gold. It runs faster than any arrow can fly. To harm it would bring the goddess's eternal wrath. To fail means your quest for redemption ends in disgrace. Hercules accepted this challenge with quiet dignity. He understood the impossible nature of the task. But impossibility had never stopped him before. Divine determination would find a way. The hunt was about to begin once more. The Nemean hind grazed in meadows touched by divine light. Its beauty was beyond mortal description or understanding. Golden antlers caught sunlight like captured stars. Bronze hooves rang like temple bells on sacred stone. The creature's eyes held wisdom older than human civilization. Artemis's blessing flowed through every breath and movement. Hercules watched from a distance with growing respect. This was no monster to be slain but perfection to be preserved. His approach would require infinite patience and careful planning. Force would only result in failure and divine punishment. For months, Hercules followed the sacred hind across the ancient world. It led him through forests where nymphs danced in moonlight. Over mountains where eagles soared higher than clouds. Across rivers that sang with voices of forgotten gods. The creature seemed to enjoy their strange game of chase. Sometimes it would pause and look back at him, almost as if testing his determination and endurance. The hero's respect for his quarry grew with each passing day. This was education as much as labor. Artemis was teaching him lessons through her sacred beast. The pursuit led into Hyperborea, the land beyond the north wind. Here eternal spring reigned despite the frozen wastes surrounding it. Apollo's people dwelt in perfect harmony with nature. They had never known war or suffering. The Nemean hind moved through this paradise like living grace. Hercules felt peace touch his troubled soul for the first time. The guilt that drove him seemed less overwhelming here. Perhaps redemption was more than completing impossible tasks. Maybe it required learning to see beauty without destroying it. The hunt was changing him in unexpected ways. At the edge of the world, where earth meets sky, the hind finally paused to drink from a crystal stream. Hercules had been pursuing it for exactly 1 year. His patience had been tested to its absolute limits. But now the moment of truth had arrived. He approached with movements slow and reverent. The sacred creature watched him with eyes like liquid starlight. Neither fear nor anger showed in its divine gaze. Trust seemed to flow between hunter and hunted. Perhaps this was what the goddess had intended. Respect could succeed where force would fail utterly. With infinite care, Hercules placed his hands upon the hind's neck. The creature did not flee but stood perfectly still. Divine power flowed through its golden fur like warm honey. For a moment, hunter and hunted existed in perfect harmony. The hero felt Artemis's presence watching from the shadows. Her approval warmed his heart like summer sunshine. He had learned the lesson she intended to teach. True strength lay in restraint rather than conquest. The third labor would succeed through gentleness alone. Violence was not always the answer to life's challenges. Artemis emerged from the forest with silver light dancing around her form. Her beauty was terrible and wonderful beyond mortal comprehension. Eyes like twin moons gazed upon Hercules with divine judgment. The goddess had been testing him throughout the long pursuit. His restraint with her sacred hind had proven his worth. "You have shown wisdom, son of Zeus," she spoke with voice like wine through leaves. "The creature is yours to take, but harm it not. Return it safely when your labor is complete." The hero bowed low before her divine majesty. Her blessing was worth more than any treasure. The journey back to Tiryns was a triumph of patience over haste. Hercules carried the sacred hind with reverence befitting temple offerings. Its golden antlers never lost their celestial gleam. Bronze hooves rang out songs of divine music. People gathered in every village to witness the miracle. Children threw flowers while women sang hymns of praise. The hero had captured impossibility itself and made it real. But his heart remained humble before such sacred trust. Artemis's lesson echoed in every careful step. True power protected rather than destroyed the beautiful things in life. Eurystheus trembled when he saw the sacred hind approaching his palace. The creature's divine radiance made his eyes water and burn. He dared not look directly upon Artemis's sacred beast. From his bronze hiding place, he commanded the hero to approach. But his voice cracked with fear and growing desperation. How had 3 labors failed to destroy his hated cousin? Each success only made Hercules more formidable and legendary. The king's advisors spoke of the Erymanthian boar with whispered dread. Perhaps this monster would succeed where others had failed. Hope was all that kept his sanity intact. "Release the hind and accept your 4th labor," Eurystheus commanded with false bravado. "You must capture the Erymanthian boar alive. This beast terrorizes Mount Erymanthus with supernatural fury. Its tusks can cut through solid bronze like soft clay. Many heroes have been gored and trampled beneath its hooves. Even Ares himself fears this creature's berserker rage." Hercules gently set the sacred hind upon the ground. It bounded away toward Artemis's sacred grove with graceful leaps. The 3rd labor was complete, but the 4th awaited. Each challenge brought him closer to redemption's light. Mount Erymanthus rose above the clouds like a titan's spear. Its slopes were covered with dense forests where danger lurked. The Erymanthian boar had claimed this peak as its kingdom. No hunter dared to venture into its domain. Hercules began his ascent with steady determination burning bright. Each step brought him closer to another impossible task. The mountain's silence felt ominous and heavily weighted with menace. Somewhere above, tusks sharper than swords awaited his flesh. But divine courage conquered mortal fear once more. The hero would not be turned from his chosen path. The centaur Pholus dwelt in a cave halfway up the sacred mountain. His wisdom was renowned throughout the ancient world. Hercules sought shelter and guidance from this noble being. The centaur welcomed him with wine and warm hospitality. They spoke of heroes and monsters long into the night. Pholus warned of the boar's incredible fury and strength. Its charge could shatter trees like fragile reeds. But he also shared knowledge of its weaknesses. Even the mightiest beast could be outwitted by clever strategy. Intelligence would matter more than strength in this battle. The wine that Pholus offered was a gift from Dionysus himself. Its divine bouquet attracted every centaur within miles of the mountain. They came in a thundering herd seeking the precious vintage. But these were not noble like Pholus in spirit or intention. Wine made them wild and unpredictable as natural disasters. They demanded the hero share the god's gift. When Hercules refused, their tempers flared into violence. Hooves and fists flew in the torchlit cave. The peaceful evening had become a battlefield. Divine hospitality had sparked an unexpected war. Hercules fought the maddened centaurs with arrows dipped in Hydra's poison. Each shot brought instant death to those who opposed him. But his heart ached with every necessary killing stroke. These creatures had been driven mad by divine wine. They were not truly evil, merely intoxicated beyond reason. Pholus wept to see his kinsmen falling around him. The hero's arrows never missed their intended targets. Soon the cave floor was littered with fallen bodies. Victory tasted bitter when innocence paid the price. Some battles won could never be forgotten or forgiven. In examining a fallen centaur's wounds, Pholus accidentally pricked his finger on a poisoned arrowhead. The Hydra's venom raced through his noble blood like liquid fire. Hercules knelt beside his dying host with tears streaming down his face. The centaur's kindness had been repaid with accidental death. "Do not blame yourself," Pholus whispered with his final breath. "Destiny cannot be changed by mortal will or divine power." The hero buried his friend with honors befitting a king. Another innocent had died because of his cursed labors. The weight of guilt grew heavier with each passing day. Hercules climbed higher up the mountain with rage burning in his heart. The wine incident had cost him a noble friend. Perhaps anger would serve him better than careful planning. The Erymanthian boar's tracks were easy to follow through deep snow. Its massive hooves left craters in the frozen ground. The creature had no fear of any living thing. It ruled this peak through terror and overwhelming force. But today it would meet its match. Divine fury would answer bestial rage with equal measure. The hero's patience had finally reached its limits. The Erymanthian boar emerged from its den like an avalanche given life. Its bulk was enormous beyond normal comprehension or belief. Tusks like curved swords gleamed in the winter sunlight. Eyes burned red with primal fury and hatred. The creature's roar shattered icicles hanging from nearby cliffs. Hercules felt the ground tremble beneath his feet. This was raw power without intelligence or mercy. But the hero had faced worse monsters in previous labors. His lion-skin cloak would turn those terrible tusks. Divine strength would overcome bestial rage through superior will. The boar charged down the mountainside with unstoppable momentum building behind its massive form. Snow flew in all directions from its thundering hooves. Hercules waited until the last possible moment before leaping aside. The creature's charge carried it past him into a deep snowdrift. Its bulk became trapped in the frozen mass. The hero saw his opportunity and took it without hesitation. He leaped upon the struggling beast's back before it could escape. His arms encircled its neck like iron bands. The battle was won through timing rather than strength. Intelligence had triumphed over brute force once again. With the Erymanthian boar secured in chains, Hercules began his descent toward Tiryns below. The creature fought against its bonds with tremendous fury. But divine forged metal would not break under any pressure. People fled as the hero approached with his terrible burden. The boar's squeals echoed through every valley and glen. Children hid behind their mothers' skirts in terror. Even hardened warriors stepped aside in respect and fear. The fourth labor was complete, but at what cost? Pholosa's death weighed heavily upon the hero's conscience. Success felt hollow when friends paid the price. Eurystheus fainted dead away when he saw the Erymanthian boar approaching his palace gates. The creature's fury was beyond anything he had imagined. Its struggles threatened to break the very chains that bound it. Palace guards scattered like leaves before autumn winds. The king's bronze jar seemed suddenly inadequate as protection. He ordered it buried deeper underground for safety. From this new depth, he commanded the boar be taken away. His voice squeaked with terror and growing desperation. For labors had failed to destroy his hated cousin. What monster could possibly succeed where others had failed? Your fifth labor, Eurystheus called from his buried refuge, is to clean the Augean stables in a single day. King Augeas owns 3,000 cattle that have never known proper care. Their stables have not been cleaned in 30 years. The filth reaches to the rafters and beyond. The stench can be smelled for miles around. This task requires no strength, only endless drudgery. Perhaps humility will succeed where monsters have failed. But Hercules accepted this challenge without protest or complaint. Every labor brought him closer to redemption's promise. No task was beneath his dignity if it served justice. The kingdom of Elis stretched across fertile plains where countless cattle grazed. King Augeas was the richest man in all of Greece. His herds numbered in the thousands beyond counting. But his wealth had made him lazy and careless. The royal stables were monuments to neglect and decay. Filth had accumulated for decades without cleaning. The smell was overwhelming to mortal senses. Even the gods avoided flying over this cursed place. Hercules studied the impossible task with growing understanding. This would require more than muscle and determination. Divine cleverness would be needed to succeed. King Augeas laughed when Hercules offered to clean his stables in one day. The task was obviously impossible for any mortal man. Even with divine strength, it would take months of labor. If you succeed, the king declared with obvious amusement, I will give you 1/10 of all my cattle. The hero accepted this bargain with quiet confidence. He had already devised a plan worthy of Athena's wisdom. The nearby rivers Alpheus and Peneus flowed past the royal grounds. Water was more powerful than any shovel could be. Nature itself would accomplish what human effort could not. Hercules began his work by breaking through the stable walls. His divine strength shattered stone and timber with ease. Then he dug mighty channels toward the flowing rivers. The labor was backbreaking even for Zeus's son. Sweat poured from his brow like rain from storm clouds. By noon, the channels were deep enough for his purpose. The hero changed the course of both rivers simultaneously. Water rushed through the stables with tremendous force. 30 years of accumulated filth was swept away in hours. The impossible had become inevitable through divine ingenuity. Wisdom had triumphed where strength alone would have failed. The Augean stables gleamed like new temples when the water receded. Every surface sparkled in the afternoon sunlight. The terrible stench had been replaced by fresh air. King Augeas stared in disbelief at the miraculous transformation. His wealth remained intact while his shame was washed away. But when Hercules came to collect his promised reward, the king's greed overcame his honor. You used the rivers to do the work, he claimed falsely. Therefore our bargain is void and meaningless. The hero's eyes flashed with righteous anger. Injustice burned in his heart like acid poison. "Keep your cattle," Hercules declared with divine dignity intact. "But know that your word means nothing to gods or men." The king's dishonesty had stained his soul with permanent marks. Augeas would pay for his betrayal in time. The hero departed without his promised reward but with honor unblemished. The fifth labor was complete regardless of royal treachery. Eurystheus could not claim this task had failed. Hercules had accomplished the impossible through wisdom and strength. His path toward redemption continued despite mortal obstacles. Divine justice would handle the false king in due course. Eurystheus ground his teeth in frustration when news of the stable cleaning reached his ears. 5 labors had failed to destroy his accursed cousin. Each success only added to the hero's growing legend. Children sang songs about Hercules in the streets. Women wove tapestries depicting his mighty deeds. The king's hatred had become a consuming fire. His advisors spoke in whispers of the Stymphalian birds. Perhaps these bronze-winged monsters would finally end his torment. The creatures were sacred to Ares himself. Surely the god of war would not let them fall. Hope flickered like candlelight in howling wind. "Your 6th labor," Eurystheus commanded with barely controlled malice, "is to drive away the Stymphalian birds from their sacred grove. These creatures have bronze wings and beaks of iron. Their feathers fall like arrows from the sky. They devour human flesh and drink warm blood. Even Ares fears to disturb their unholy roost. The lake where they dwell is surrounded by treacherous marshland. Many warriors have been lost in those deadly waters." But Hercules merely nodded in acceptance of this challenge. Each labor tested different aspects of his nature. Divine courage would overcome whatever horrors awaited him in that cursed place. The Stymphalian lake was surrounded by marshes that trapped unwary travelers. Quicksand and hidden pools waited for careless footsteps. The water itself was black as midnight and still as death. No fish swam in those dark depths. Even insects avoided the poisonous surface. In the trees above, thousands of bronze birds perched like metallic fruit. Their eyes glowed red with supernatural malevolence. Each creature was the size of an eagle. Their beaks could pierce the strongest armor ever forged. The hero studied this challenge with growing concern. How could he fight enemies that ruled both air and water? Athena appeared beside Hercules in the form of an old woman gathering herbs. Her disguise was perfect to mortal eyes. "The birds cannot be reached by conventional means," she advised with divine wisdom. "But sound travels where warriors cannot go. Use these castanets forged by Hephaestus himself." The bronze instruments gleamed with supernatural power. Their music would drive the birds from their sanctuary. Divine craftsmanship had provided the solution to an impossible problem. The hero accepted the gift with grateful reverence. Wisdom was proving more valuable than strength in these labors. Sometimes the right tool mattered more than mighty muscles. Hercules climbed to a high hill overlooking the cursed lake. The bronze bird sensed his presence and began to stir. Their metallic feathers rustled like armor in the wind. He raised the divine castanets and began to play. The sound that emerged was unlike any mortal music. It vibrated through the air with supernatural force. The birds shrieked and took flight in massive clouds. Their bronze wings created thunder in the darkening sky. Some escaped to distant lands, never to return. Others fell within range of his poisoned arrows. Divine strategy had succeeded where brute force would have failed completely. The surviving Stymphalian birds fled toward the distant island of Ares. Their bronze wings carried them beyond the reach of mortal weapons. The lake fell silent for the first time in centuries. Fish began to swim in waters no longer poisoned. Flowers bloomed along shores once barren and cursed. The sixth labor was complete through divine assistance and wisdom. Hercules offered prayers of thanks to wise Athena. Her guidance had made victory possible against impossible odds. The hero was learning that even divine strength required careful application. Wisdom and power together could overcome any obstacle life presented. Eurystheus wept with rage and frustration when news of the bird's defeat reached his palace. 6 labors had failed to destroy the hated hero. His bronze jar no longer felt like adequate protection. The king ordered it buried deeper in the earth. Perhaps distance would provide the safety that bronze could not. His advisors spoke of the Cretan bull with desperate hope. This creature had been sent by Poseidon himself. Surely the earth-shaker would not let his gift be captured. The king clung to this hope like a drowning man. His sanity depended on Hercules' eventual failure. Your 7th labor, Eurystheus commanded from his deep refuge, is to capture the Cretan bull alive and unharmed. This beast was a gift from Poseidon to King Minos. It breathes fire that can melt bronze armor. Its hooves crack stone with every step. The creature has gone mad and terrorizes the entire island. Even the Minotaur fears this monster's rage. Hercules accepted this task without hesitation or complaint. 7 labors completed meant only 5 remained ahead. Each challenge brought him closer to redemption's promised light. Divine determination burned brighter with every passing trial. The voyage to Crete took Hercules across wine-dark seas where dolphins played. The island rose from blue waters like a jewel. King Minos welcomed the hero with desperate gratitude. The Cretan bull had been ravaging his kingdom for months. Crops burned in its wake like offerings to angry gods. Villages stood empty, their people fled to distant hills. The king offered his entire treasury for the beast's removal. But Hercules desired only the completion of his labor. Wealth meant nothing compared to redemption's promise. He would face this monster with courage alone as his reward. The Cretan bull stood in a field of burning grain like a demon from Tartarus. Fire streamed from its nostrils with each breath. The ground cracked beneath its massive bronze hooves. Eyes burned red with divine madness and rage. This was Poseidon's gift corrupted by its own power. The creature had forgotten its noble purpose and become destruction incarnate. Hercules approached with respect for its divine origin. Even corrupted, it deserved honor for its God-given nature. Perhaps gentle words could reach the wisdom buried beneath madness. Sometimes healing was more powerful than conquest. The hero spoke to the bull in soothing tones like a father to his child. His voice carried divine authority inherited from Zeus. The creature's rage began to flicker like dying flames. Its eyes showed confusion where madness had reigned. Poseidon's original blessing stirred within its corrupted heart. Slowly, carefully, Hercules approached the mighty beast. His hands were steady as he placed them on its burning flanks. Divine power flowed between them like healing waters. The bull's fire dimmed to harmless warmth. Reason returned to eyes that had known only fury. Love had conquered what violence never could. The Cretan bull followed Hercules like a faithful dog to its new home. Its madness was gone, replaced by gentle nobility. King Minos wept to see his kingdom's salvation departing. But the labor required the creature's capture and removal. The hero led his docile charge across the darkening seas. Stars reflected in calm waters like scattered diamonds. The bull stood peacefully in the ship's prow. Its breath warmed the evening air without burning. The seventh labor was complete through compassion rather than conquest. Sometimes the gentlest approach proved most effective against overwhelming obstacles. Eurystheus cowered deeper in his bronze refuge when the Cretan bull approached his palace. The creature's very presence made the ground tremble. Though docile now, its power was still beyond mortal comprehension. 7 labors had failed to destroy the accursed hero. Each success only made Hercules more legendary and feared. The king's sanity hung by the thinnest of threads. His advisors whispered of Diomedes and his man-eating horses. Perhaps these monsters would succeed where others had failed. The creatures were fed on human flesh and blood. Surely they would devour even Zeus's son. Your 8th labor, Eurystheus shrieked from his buried sanctuary, is to steal the mares of Diomedes. These horses eat human flesh instead of grain. Their king feeds them prisoners and slaves. The beasts are chained with iron bonds that no mortal can break. Their breath is poisonous fire that kills with one lungful. Even Ares avoids their stable of horrors. Bring them here alive if you dare. Hercules heard the challenge without flinching or showing fear. 8 labors meant only 4 remained before redemption. Each trial tested different aspects of his divine nature. Courage would overcome whatever horrors awaited in that distant land. King Diomedes ruled his people through terror and unspeakable cruelty. His palace was built from the bones of murdered enemies. The royal stables housed 4 man-eating mares of supernatural ferocity. Podargos, Lampon, Xanthos, and Danos had never known mercy. Their teeth were sharp as sword blades. Their eyes burned with unholy hunger for human flesh. Prisoners were thrown to them for entertainment at royal feasts. The king laughed while innocents screamed and died. His soul was blacker than the depths of Tartarus. Such evil could not be allowed to continue unpunished. Hercules arrived in Thrace with Abderus, his beloved companion and friend. The young man's loyalty touched the hero's heart. Together they would face whatever horrors awaited them. The palace of Diomedes rose before them like a monument to evil. Guards armed with bloodied weapons patrolled the walls. Screams echoed from the dungeons below ground level. The very air tasted of death and suffering. Abderus gripped his sword with determination shining in his eyes. He would stand beside his hero against any foe. Friendship gave strength where courage alone might falter. The man-eating mares were kept in bronze stables reinforced with divine metal. Their chains were forged by Hephaestus himself at Diomedes' command. The creatures pawed the ground with hooves sharp as spears. Steam rose from their nostrils like breath from dragons. Their hunger was endless and insatiable as the grave. fresh bones littered the stable floor like scattered coins. These were not horses but demons wearing equine form. Hercules studied the challenge with growing understanding of its difficulty. Brute force would not be enough this time. Strategy and sacrifice would both be required. Under cover of darkness, Hercules and Abderus crept toward the terrible stables. Guards patrolled with burning torches held high. The hero's lion-skin cloak blended with shadows perfectly. His divine nature allowed movement silent as hunting cats. The Mares sensed their approach and began to neigh with bloodthirsty anticipation. Soon they would taste fresh meat and warm blood. But tonight would be different from their usual feeding. The hero had come to free them from their evil master. Redemption was possible even for the most corrupted souls. Hercules shattered the bronze chains with his divine strength unleashed. The metal links snapped like dried twigs in a storm. The man-eating Mares reared up with terrible joy at their sudden freedom. Their teeth gleamed like white daggers in the torchlight. But instead of attacking, they waited as if sensing greater prey nearby. The hero led them toward the palace where their cruel master slept. Tonight justice would be served in the most fitting manner. The evil king would face his own instruments of torture. Divine retribution was about to unfold. King Diomedes awoke to find his palace surrounded by his own Mares. The creatures he had used to torture innocents now came for him. His guards fled in terror from the supernatural beasts. The king's screams echoed through the night like music to divine ears. His evil reign was ending in the most appropriate way. The Mares showed him the same mercy he had shown their victims. Hercules watched without pity as justice ran its course. Some sins were too great for any other punishment. The evil king's death freed countless innocent souls. With their cruel master dead, the man-eating Mares began to change before Hercules' eyes. The corruption that had twisted their nature started to fade. Divine power flowed through them like cleansing water. Their bloodthirsty madness gave way to natural equine nobility. Soon they grazed peacefully on ordinary grass instead of human flesh. The hero marveled at this transformation wrought by justice. Even the most evil curses could be broken. But his heart ached for faithful Abderus, who had been killed in the battle. Another innocent had died because of his labors. The price of heroism continued to climb. Hercules buried Abderus with honors befitting a hero's companion and friend. The young man's courage deserved eternal remembrance and praise. A city was founded on the spot to honor his memory. Its name would carry his legend through all future ages. The hero wept openly for his fallen comrade. Death had claimed another person dear to his heart. The 8 labor was complete, but the cost grew heavier. Each victory seemed to demand sacrifice from those around him. Perhaps this was the true nature of his curse. Everyone he loved was destined to suffer. The transformed Mares followed Hercules willingly back to Tiryns. Their gentle nature was now their most striking feature. Children ran alongside them without fear or hesitation. The creatures that had once devoured human flesh now nuzzled hands for treats. King Eurystheus trembled when he saw them approaching. Even transformed, their power was beyond mortal comprehension. 8 labors had failed to destroy his hated cousin. The hero's legend grew stronger with each passing trial. Desperation was beginning to consume the king's sanity completely. Only 4 more chances remain to destroy his enemy. Your 9th labor, Eurystheus commanded with voice cracking from strain, is to obtain the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. These warrior women have never been defeated in battle. Their strength rivals that of gods themselves. The girdle was a gift from Ares, god of war. Its power makes the wearer invincible in combat. My daughter Admete desires this prize above all earthly treasures. Bring it back or admit your failure. Hercules accepted this quest with heavy heart. War against noble warriors troubled his spirit. But redemption required completing all 12 labors assigned to him. The Amazon kingdom lay beyond the Black Sea's dangerous waters. These warrior women ruled vast territories with wisdom and strength. Their capital city was a marvel of architecture and planning. Queen Hippolyta was renowned for beauty and courage in equal measure. Her girdle gleamed with divine power from Ares himself. The god of war had favored these women above all mortal warriors. They had earned their gifts through valor on countless battlefields. Hercules hoped to avoid bloodshed through diplomatic means. Perhaps honor could prevail over violence this time. Queen Hippolyta received Hercules with curiosity and respect rather than hostility. His reputation as a hero had reached even these distant shores. The Amazon queen was beautiful beyond mortal description or understanding. Her strength was evident in every graceful movement. The girdle of Ares gleamed around her waist like captured starlight. She listened to his request with growing sympathy. The hero's quest for redemption touched her noble heart. Perhaps the girdle could be given freely rather than taken by force. Honor recognized honor across all boundaries. But Hera could not allow such peaceful resolution to her enemy's quest. The goddess appeared among the Amazons disguised as one of their number. Her lies poisoned their minds against the visiting hero. "He comes to steal your queen and enslave your daughters," she whispered with false concern. "His strength threatens everything you have built here." The warrior women's hearts filled with suspicion and growing anger. They reached for their weapons with practiced movements. War clouds gathered where peace might have reigned. Divine hatred had corrupted another chance for harmony. The Amazon warriors attacked without warning or opportunity for explanation. Their battle cries echoed across the peaceful harbor. Spears and arrows filled the air like deadly rain. Hercules defended himself with terrible reluctance and growing sorrow. These noble women fought with honor and tremendous skill. But divine strength could not be matched by mortal courage. His arrows found their marks with heartbreaking accuracy. The dock ran red with blood of fallen warriors. Each death weighed heavily upon his tortured conscience. Hera's manipulation had turned allies into enemies. Queen Hippolyta fell with an arrow through her noble heart. Her eyes met Hercules's with understanding in their dying light. She realized the truth of Hera's deception too late. With her final breath, she unclasped the sacred girdle. "Take it," she whispered with voice growing weak. "Your quest is just, though corrupted by divine hatred." The hero knelt beside her with tears streaming down his face. Another innocent had died because of his cursed labors. He took the girdle with hands that trembled. The 9th labor was complete, but victory tasted like ashes. The surviving Amazons wept for their fallen queen and sisters. Hercules stood among the carnage with shame burning in his heart. These women had shown him friendship and respect. Hera's lies had turned that kindness into bloodshed. He offered to help them rebuild what his presence had destroyed. But the Amazons desired only his departure from their land. The hero sailed away with the girdle as his prize. Behind him, smoke rose from funeral pyres. Another kingdom had paid the price for his redemption. The guilt continued to accumulate like winter snow. Eurystheus accepted the girdle with hands that shook from fear and anticipation. 9 labors had failed to destroy his accursed cousin. The hero's legend had grown with each completed task. Even his daughter Admete whispered prayers to Hercules at night. The king's authority was crumbling like sand before tide. His advisors spoke of Geryon and his cattle with desperate hope. This 3-bodied giant lived at the edge. His advisors spoke of Geryon and his cattle with desperate hope. This 3-bodied giant lived at the edge of the world itself. His herd was guarded by the hound Orthrus, brother to Cerberus. The creatures grazed on islands surrounded by endless ocean. No mortal had ever returned from that distant realm. Perhaps the journey alone would claim the hero's life. The king clung to this possibility like drowning sailors. His sanity depended on Hercules meeting his doom at last. Your 10th labor, Eurystheus commanded with barely contained hysteria, is to steal the cattle of Geryon from the sunset lands. This giant has 3 bodies joined at the waist. Each one is stronger than 100 mortal warriors. His herdsman Eurytion never sleeps or rests from his duties. The 2-headed dog Orthrus guards the sacred cattle. You must bring them here across impossible distances. Hercules nodded in solemn acceptance of this challenge. 10 labors meant only 2 remained before his redemption. The end of his long journey was finally approaching. The voyage to the western edge of the world took months of sailing. Hercules traveled alone across wine-dark seas where strange creatures dwelt. His ship passed islands where sirens sang their deadly songs. Sea monsters rose from depths to challenge his passage. But divine protection surrounded him like invisible armor. The sun god Helios watched his progress with growing admiration. This hero's determination impressed even immortal hearts. At the straits between 2 continents, Hercules raised pillars to mark his passage. The columns would stand as monuments to his journey. The island of Erythea floated in waters touched by sunset's glow. Here eternal twilight bathed everything in golden light. Geryon's castle rose from rocky cliffs like a mountain of stone. The giant's cattle grazed in meadows of supernatural grass. Their hides gleamed red as blood in the dying light. Eurytion the herdsman watched them with eyes that never closed. Orthrus prowled the perimeter with 2 heads always alert. This was a fortress that had never been breached. Yet Hercules had faced impossible odds many times before. Orthrus detected the hero's approach long before mortal senses would have noticed. The 2-headed hound bounded toward him with supernatural speed and fury. Each mouth contained teeth like ivory daggers. Its bark echoed across the island like thunder. But Hercules met the creature with his mighty club raised high. Divine olive wood struck both heads simultaneously. The impact crushed bone and scattered brains like autumn leaves. Cerberus's brother fell without making another sound. One guardian was removed from his path. Eurytion the herdsman came running at the sound of his dog's death. He had guarded Geryon's cattle for countless centuries without failure. His spear was forged from meteoric iron that fell from heaven. The weapon could pierce any armor ever made by mortal hands. He hurled it with all his supernatural strength behind the throw. But Hercules caught the spear in mid-flight and snapped it. His return throw sent the broken shaft through the herdsman's heart. 2 guardians had fallen to divine determination. Only Geryon himself remained as an obstacle. The 3-bodied giant emerged from his castle like a living mountain. Each of his torsos was armored in bronze that gleamed like mirrors. 6 arms wielded weapons of incredible craftsmanship and power. His voices spoke in harmony that made the earth tremble. "Who dares steal my sacred cattle?" he boomed with triple fury. The sound shattered windows in his own fortress. Hercules stood his ground despite the overwhelming display of might. He had faced gods and monsters beyond mortal imagination. One giant, however mighty, would not break his resolve now. The battle between hero and giant shook the very foundations of the island. Geryon's 6 arms struck from every angle simultaneously. His weapons clanged against Hercules' lion-skin armor without effect. The hero's arrows found gaps between bronze plates with deadly precision. Hydra venom coursed through the giant's triple bloodstream like liquid fire. Each body fell in sequence as poison did its work. The mighty Geryon crashed to earth like a toppled tower. His reign over the sunset lands had finally ended. The 10th labor was nearly complete. Hercules gathered the red cattle into a vast herd for the journey home. The creatures followed him willingly, sensing his divine authority. Their eyes held wisdom beyond ordinary beasts of field and pasture. These were not common animals but sacred creatures of the sun. The voyage back across endless waters would test even divine patience. But the hero's determination burned brighter than any sunset. Each step brought him closer to redemption's promised shore. Only 2 more labors remained before his suffering ended. The return journey took Hercules through lands where giants and monsters ruled. In Spain, he battled Cacus, the fire-breathing son of Vulcan. The creature had stolen some of his cattle during the night. Its cave belched forth flames that could melt solid rock. But divine arrows ended its reign of terror quickly. Through Gaul, he faced barbarian tribes who coveted his herd. Their king fell before his club in single combat. The cattle moved onward toward their destined home. Each obstacle overcome brought the hero closer to peace. At the gates of Tiryns, Eurystheus cowered in his bronze refuge deeper underground. The sound of approaching cattle made his blood freeze. 10 labors had failed to destroy his hated cousin completely. The hero's legend had grown beyond all reasonable bounds. Children carved his image into temple stones. Poets sang of his deeds in every corner of Greece. The king's hatred had become a consuming madness. His advisors whispered of the golden apples with desperate hope. Perhaps the garden of the Hesperides would claim his enemy's life. "Your 11th labor," Eurystheus shrieked from his buried sanctuary, "is to steal the golden apples from the garden of the Hesperides. These fruits grant immortality to those who taste them." The tree was a wedding gift from Gaia to Hera herself. It is guarded by the dragon laden with 100 heads. The garden lies at the edge of the world where Atlas holds up the sky. No mortal has ever found this sacred place. But Hercules accepted even this impossible challenge with quiet dignity. 11 labors meant only one remained after this trial. The end was finally within sight. The search for the garden of the Hesperides led Hercules to the ends of the earth. He questioned nymphs and river gods for directions to the sacred grove. Sea goddesses pointed toward distant horizons wreathed in eternal mist. The hero traveled through lands where the sun never set. Strange peoples dwelt in these twilight realms of perpetual shadow. Their wisdom was ancient beyond mortal understanding or comprehension. Finally, an old man by a crystal spring gave him the guidance needed. The garden lay where Atlas held up the dome of heaven. Atlas stood with the weight of the world upon his mighty shoulders. The Titan's punishment for rebellion against Zeus seemed eternal and absolute. His muscles strained against the burden of the endless sky. Stars moved around him in their ancient courses. The hero approached with respect for such titanic suffering. Here was pain that dwarfed even his own trials. Perhaps they could help each other in their different struggles. Divine compassion reached across the gulf between God and mortal. Even enemies could find common ground in shared suffering. I seek the golden apples of the Hesperides, Hercules explained with honest humility. Perhaps you know where this sacred garden lies hidden. Atlas looked down with eyes that had seen the birth of worlds. His burden pressed down like the weight of eternity itself. I know the place you seek, the Titan rumbled with voice like distant thunder. My daughters guard the tree of immortal fruit. But I cannot leave my post to guide you there. The sky would fall and crush the earth below. A desperate plan began to form in both their minds. Let me bear your burden, Hercules offered with divine courage shining bright. Hold up the heavens while you fetch the apples. Together we can accomplish what neither could do alone. Atlas considered this proposal with growing hope and excitement. For eons he had dreamed of freedom from his crushing load. His shoulders ached with the pain of countless centuries. Perhaps this hero could provide temporary relief from endless torment. The weight of the world could be shared between them. Divine strength might equal titanic power for a brief time. Hercules positioned himself beneath the celestial sphere with legs braced wide. His divine muscles tensed as Atlas slowly transferred the weight. The burden was beyond anything he had ever imagined. The sky pressed down like the weight of all creation. Stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns and courses. The hero's breath came in gasps as pressure mounted. But his determination held firm against impossible odds. Atlas stretched muscles that had been locked in position for ages. Freedom tasted sweeter than ambrosia itself to the grateful Titan. Atlas departed for the garden with joy lighting his ancient features. The Titan moved with speed that belied his enormous size. Behind him, Hercules struggled beneath the weight of heaven itself. The sky pressed down with crushing force that threatened consciousness. Sweat poured from his divine brow like rivers in flood. His knees buckled and trembled under the impossible burden. Time crawled by with agonizing slowness as he waited. Each moment felt like years of crushing eternity. The hero's endurance was being tested to its absolute limits. The Titan returned carrying 3 golden apples that gleamed like captured sunlight. Their beauty was beyond mortal description or earthly comparison. Each fruit contained the essence of immortality itself. Here are the apples you requested, Atlas declared with obvious satisfaction. But I have decided not to resume my burden. You seem well suited to hold up the sky. I will deliver these fruits to Eurystheus myself. The Titan's cunning matched his enormous strength. He thought to escape his eternal punishment through deception. But Hercules had faced trickery before from cleverer opponents. Your wisdom surpasses my own, Hercules agreed with false humility shining bright. But let me adjust my position for better support. Take back the sky for just one moment while I settle myself. Atlas's pride in his own cleverness blinded him to the trap. He resumed his burden while the hero pretended to adjust. The moment the weight transferred back, Hercules grabbed the golden apples. Farewell, Atlas, he called while departing at supernatural speed. Your punishment must continue as the fates decreed. The Titan's roars of rage shook mountains to their foundations. The journey back to Tiryns seemed swift compared to the crushing weight of heaven. The golden apples pulsed with divine power in Hercules' hands. Their surface reflected light that had never known earthly sources. Inside each fruit, immortality waited like golden honey. But the hero felt no temptation to taste their promise. His quest was for redemption, not endless life. The 11th labor was complete through cunning rather than strength. Wisdom had proved as valuable as divine might. Only one more trial remained before his suffering ended. Eurystheus wailed like a damned soul when the golden apples arrived at his palace. 11 labors had failed to destroy the accursed hero completely. His bronze refuge felt inadequate against such divine power. The king's sanity hung by the thinnest thread of hope. His advisors spoke in terrified whispers of one final task. Cerberus, the three-headed hound of Hades himself. Surely death's own guardian would succeed where others had failed. The underworld had never released any living mortal. Perhaps this would be Hercules' final destination at last. Your 12th and final labor, Eurystheus commanded with voice cracking from strain, is to bring back Cerberus from the realm of the dead. This three-headed hound guards the gates of Hades with supernatural vigilance. Its bite is poisonous death itself made manifest. Even the gods fear to face this monster. You must bring it here alive without weapons or divine aid. This task will surely end your cursed quest forever. But Hercules felt only relief at these words. The final labor would complete his redemption. Freedom from guilt was finally within his grasp. The entrance to the underworld lay in a cave wreathed with eternal shadow. No sunlight had ever touched these depths of darkness. The air grew colder with each downward step. Souls of the dead drifted past like mournful mist. The river Styx flowed with waters black as despair itself. Charon the ferryman pulled his boat through liquid sorrow. Hercules waded through the cursed stream with divine power protecting him. The ferryman cowered before such living strength in death's domain. Even here, Zeus's blood commanded respect and fear. The fields of asphodel stretched endlessly through twilight realm. Here ordinary souls wandered in eternal confusion and loss. They remembered little of their mortal lives above. Hercules moved among them like flame through shadow. His divine vitality blazed in the land of death. Persephone's palace rose before him like dark crystal. The queen of the underworld sat upon her throne of black marble. Her beauty was terrible and cold as winter's heart. Beside her, Hades ruled with grim authority over endless realms. Death itself looked upon the living hero with surprise. "Why do you come to my realm while life still flows through your veins?" Hades asked with voice like closing tombs. "The living are not welcome in these depths of eternal shadow." His eyes burned with the fire of judgment itself. Persephone watched with curiosity rather than hostility or anger. The hero's courage impressed even Death's own queen. Hercules knelt before their terrible majesty with proper reverence and respect. His quest would not succeed without their divine permission. Even heroes must humble themselves before ultimate authority. "Great Lord of the dead," Hercules spoke with honest desperation, "I seek your hound Cerberus for my final labor. Grant me permission to take him to the world above. My redemption depends upon completing this impossible task." Hades considered the request with grim amusement flickering in his eyes. No mortal had ever made such a bold petition. The audacity was almost admirable in its complete hopelessness. But the hero's sincerity was evident in every word. Perhaps even death could show mercy to genuine repentance. "You may attempt to take Cerberus," Hades declared with royal authority echoing through the realm, "but you must subdue him without weapons of any kind. Use only the strength Zeus gave you at birth. If you succeed, he is yours temporarily. Fail, and remain here as my eternal slave." The terms were harsh but fair by underworld standards. Hercules accepted without hesitation or complaint. His bare hands would have to overcome the greatest guardian ever created. Divine strength would face its ultimate test in Death's domain. Cerberus crouched before the gates of Tartarus like living nightmare made flesh. The three-headed hound was larger than any earthly beast. Each head bore fangs that dripped with lethal venom. Its eyes glowed red as coals from Hephaestus's forge. A mane of serpents writhed around each terrible neck. The creature's breath was poisonous death itself made manifest. Even demons feared to approach this ultimate guardian. Hercules studied his opponent with growing understanding of the challenge. This would be his greatest test yet faced. The hero approached Cerberus with empty hands spread wide in peaceful gesture. The hound's three heads tracked his movement with supernatural awareness. A growl like distant thunder rumbled from its massive chest. Divine power radiated from every muscle in the hero's frame. This was Zeus's son facing Death's own champion in single combat. The confrontation would determine his ultimate fate and destiny. Redemption or eternal damnation hung in the balance. The final battle of his labors was about to begin. Hercules lunged forward and grappled with the three-headed monster in mortal embrace. Each head snapped with jaws powerful enough to crush bronze. Venomous fangs sought flesh that remained just beyond reach. The hero's lion skin cloak protected him from the worst attacks. But Cerberus was stronger than any opponent he had faced. The creature's strength rivaled his own divine might. They rolled together across the stone floor of hell. Neither could gain decisive advantage in this ultimate struggle. Victory would require every ounce of power and determination. The battle raged for hours in the depths of Hades's realm. Hercules used every wrestling technique learned from centaur masters. His muscles strained against supernatural resistance that never yielded. Cerberus fought with the fury of death itself unleashed. The creature's three heads struck from different angles simultaneously. But gradually, divine strength began to tell against infernal power. The hero's grip tightened around the hound's central throat. pressure mounted as air flow was slowly restricted. Even Death's guardian needed breath to sustain life and consciousness. With a final surge of divine strength, Hercules locked his arms around all three necks. The serpent manes writhed and struck but could not pierce his armor. Cerberus's struggles grew weaker as consciousness began to fade. The mighty hound's eyes rolled back as darkness claimed its mind. Victory belonged to Zeus's son through sheer determination and will. The greatest guardian in all creation had been subdued by mortal hands. Hades watched with grudging admiration for such impossible achievement. Even Death could recognize true heroism when witnessing it. Hercules lifted the unconscious Cerberus and carried him toward the upper world. The hound's weight would have crushed ordinary men completely. But divine strength bore the burden without visible strain. The journey through Death's realm seemed endless in its duration. Souls fled from the approaching pair in supernatural terror. None had ever seen their guardian defeated and removed. The very foundations of the underworld trembled with shock. A new legend was being born in the depths of darkness. At the boundary between death and life, Cerberus began to stir. The hound's three heads lifted with growing awareness of changed circumstances. Sunlight streaming down from the world above burned its eyes. The creature had never known anything but eternal darkness. Hercules held firm as the beast struggled against this alien environment. Divine strength contained infernal fury through sheer force of will. The final labor was almost complete at last. Redemption waited just steps away in the mortal realm. The emergence from the underworld with Cerberus created panic throughout Greece. People fled from the three-headed hound in supernatural terror. The creature's very presence brought nightmares to sleeping minds. Plants withered where its breath touched leaves. Even brave warriors cowered before death's own guardian. But Hercules controlled the beast through divine authority inherited from Zeus. His long journey of redemption was finally reaching its destined end. 12 labors would soon be completed through determination and divine will. Eurystheus fainted completely when Cerberus appeared before his palace gates. The three-headed hound was beyond his worst nightmares or deepest fears. His bronze refuge suddenly seemed like child's toy before such power. Guards scattered like leaves before hurricane winds unleashed. The king's sanity finally snapped under overwhelming terror and despair. 12 labors had failed to destroy his hated cousin. Hercules had achieved the impossible and returned Death's guardian. The hero's redemption was complete beyond any possible doubt. Hercules knelt before the cowering king with victory complete at last. All 12 labors have been accomplished as the oracle commanded. My debt is paid and redemption earned through divine will. His voice carried the authority of gods themselves. The long journey that began with madness had ended in triumph. Guilt no longer crushed his shoulders like Atlas's burden. Peace settled over his divine soul like gentle rain. The greatest hero in all creation had earned his freedom from the past. After displaying Cerberus to complete the final labor, Hercules returned the hound to its proper realm. Hades welcomed back his guardian with relief and gratitude. The underworld had not been the same without its greatest protector. Death's domain required eternal vigilance against the forces of chaos. Cerberus resumed his post at the gates of Tartarus. The natural order was restored through the hero's honor. Even in victory, he respected the balance between life and death. Free at last from his labors and the weight of guilt, Hercules stood beneath open skies. The sun seemed brighter than ever before in his memory. Birds sang sweeter songs of joy and celebration. His redemption was complete through divine justice and mercy. The blood of his family no longer stained his hands. Hera's curse had been lifted through suffering willingly endured. Apollo's oracle had spoken true prophecy and wisdom. 12 labors had purified a hero's tainted soul through trials beyond mortal endurance. Hercules wandered the ancient world as a free man for the first time. His reputation had grown beyond all earthly bounds or limitations. Kings sought his aid against monsters and enemies. Common people blessed his name in evening prayers. But the hero's heart yearned for something more than glory. He had learned that strength without purpose led only to destruction. The greatest victories meant nothing without someone to share them. Love remained the one prize worth any sacrifice or struggle. In the kingdom of Calydon, Hercules met Diana, daughter of King Aeneas. Her beauty rivaled that of goddesses themselves in mortal form. But more than physical grace, her spirit called to his. She possessed wisdom, courage, and compassion in equal measure. Her laughter was like music after years of silence. The hero felt his heart awakening from its long winter. Here was someone worth fighting for and protecting. Love bloomed again despite past tragedy and loss. Diana had many suitors competing for her hand in marriage. Princes from distant lands brought gifts of gold and jewels. But her father decreed a contest to determine her husband. The winner would be whoever could defeat the river god Hercules. This ancient deity desired her for his own immortal bride. His power over water made him nearly invincible in combat. Many heroes had tried and failed to overcome him. Now Hercules would test his strength against divine opposition once more. Hercules emerged from his river in the form of a mighty bull. His horns gleamed like polished silver in the setting sun. Steam rose from his divine hide like mist from sacred waters. The river god's eyes blazed with immortal fury and possessive desire. Mortal hero, he bellowed with voice like rushing floods, withdraw from this contest while you still live. No human can defeat the forces of nature itself. But Hercules stood firm before this divine challenge. His labors had ended, but his fighting spirit remained strong. Hero and river god clashed with power that shook earth itself. Hercules shifted between forms like flowing water seeking advantage. Bull, serpent, and man-headed river fought with supernatural fury. But Hercules adapted to each transformation with divine skill. His strength had been tested against every conceivable foe. One river god, however mighty, could not match 12 labors of experience. The battle raged across fields and through forests. Victory would go to the more determined combatant. With a mighty effort, Hercules grasped one of the bull's silver horns. Divine strength strained against immortal power in final contest. The horn began to crack under pressure beyond imagination. Hercules roared with pain as part of his being was torn away. The severed horn fell to earth and immediately flowered. From its tip poured fruits of every season in abundance. The cornucopia was born from divine conflict and heroic victory. Love had triumphed over possessive desire once more. Defeated Hercules retreated to his river's depths to nurse wounded pride. His horn had become humanity's symbol of plenty and abundance. Hercules had won the right to marry beautiful Diana. Their wedding feast lasted 7 days and nights of celebration. All Greece rejoiced at the hero's happiness found. Music and dancing filled every street and square. The man who had suffered so much deserved joy. Love had finally conquered the shadows of his past. Hercules and Diana lived in blissful harmony for 3 years. Their love grew stronger with each passing season and day. The hero had learned to be gentle as well as strong. His wife's wisdom guided him toward peaceful solutions to problems. Together they helped their people prosper and flourish in safety. Children played in streets free from fear. The kingdom knew peace under their protection. Happiness seemed destined to last for all eternity. But fate had one more trial in store. While traveling through dangerous territory, the couple came to a raging river. The centaur Nessus offered to carry Diana safely across the torrent. But his intentions were far from honorable service. As soon as they reached the middle, he attempted to ravish her. Her screams of terror reached Hercules' ears like knives. Divine fury exploded in the hero's heart once more. His arrow, tipped with hydra venom, found its target instantly. Justice was served with deadly accuracy and speed. Dying Nessus whispered poisonous lies into Diana's innocent ears. "Take some of my blood as protection," he gasped with false kindness. "If your husband ever loves another, this will win back his heart." The naive woman collected the centaur's blood in a vial. She believed his deception about love potions and magic. But hydra venom flowed in the creature's veins like liquid death. The centaur's revenge would claim its victims from beyond the grave. Evil never truly dies but waits for opportunity. Years passed in continued happiness until Hercules rescued Iole from her fallen city. The princess was beautiful beyond description or mortal comparison. Though the hero remained faithful to his wife, rumors spread. Jealous whispers reached Diana's ears like poisoned arrows. Fear began to gnaw at her heart like acid. Perhaps her husband's eye had wandered to younger beauty. The vial of Nessus's blood called to her from its hiding place. Desperate love would make the fatal choice. Diana wove a robe with the centaur's blood as dye. Its crimson color seemed beautiful and rich to her eyes. She sent the garment as a gift to her beloved husband. "Wear this at the sacrifice to Zeus," her message read lovingly. The hero accepted the present with touching gratitude and joy. His wife's thoughtfulness warmed his heart like sunrise. He donned the robe before the sacred altar. Divine fire was about to claim another victim. The moment the robe touched Hercules' skin, agony beyond description consumed him. Hydra venom soaked through fabric into divine flesh instantly. The garment clung to his body like molten metal. Every attempt to remove it tore away skin and muscle. His screams echoed across mountains and valleys in endless waves. Divine strength became torture as poison burned through his veins. The hero who had conquered death itself was dying slowly. Nessus's revenge was complete at last. Diana learned of her husband's torment through a messenger's tears. The truth about Nessus's deception struck her like lightning. Her gift of love had become an instrument of murder. Guilt crushed her spirit more completely than any physical burden. She had killed the man she loved more than life. The vial slipped from nerveless fingers to shatter on stone. Her own death followed swiftly by her hand. Love and trust had been corrupted into tragedy. Hercules knew his mortal life was ending in the flames of poison. No power on earth could save him from the Hydra's venom. But perhaps divine fire could where earthly remedies failed completely. He ordered a great pyre built on Mount Ida. The funeral flames would consume his mortal flesh forever. His divine soul would ascend to join the gods. Death would be transformation rather than ending. The hero's final choice was made with courage intact. The pyre blazed higher than any mortal fire as Hercules lay down. Divine flames consumed his body but not his spirit. Zeus watched from Olympus as his son faced death. Thunder rolled across clear skies in recognition of heroism. The mortal man was dying, but the hero lived. Lightning struck the pyre with divine power unleashed. When flames died down, nothing remained but scattered ashes. Hercules had passed beyond mortality's reach at last. From the ashes rose a phoenix of pure light that soared toward Olympus. The gods welcomed their newest member with joy and celebration. Hera herself embraced her former enemy with divine forgiveness. Hatred had been purged by suffering willingly endured. Zeus placed his son among the stars as constellation. Hercules would shine forever in the night sky. Heroes would look up and draw inspiration from his light. The greatest legend had found its eternal home. On Mount Olympus, Hercules was granted immortality and divine status. His labors were remembered as the greatest heroic deeds. Mortals would tell his stories for all ages to come. Children would dream of matching his courage and strength. The hero had achieved the ultimate redemption possible. From madness and murder to godhood and glory. His example proved that no sin was beyond forgiveness. Suffering willingly accepted could purify any soul completely. And so ends the tale of Hercules, son of Zeus, mightiest of heroes. His journey from darkness into light illuminates the path for all. Rest now, dreamer, and let his courage fill your dreams. May his strength protect you through the watches of night. Let his redemption remind you that hope never dies. The stars themselves sing his glory for eternity. Sleep peaceful in the knowledge that heroes watch over you. Dawn will come with new possibilities for greatness. The hero's legend lives on in every act of courage. His spirit dwells in those who fight for justice. When mortals face impossible odds, his example guides them. The greatest strength lies not in muscle but in heart. True victory comes through perseverance despite failure. These lessons echo through the ages like divine thunder. Sleep now, and dream of your own heroic destiny. For every soul carries the spark of Hercules within. Sweet dreams carry you to realms where legends walk, where heroes are born, where redemption waits. The greatest stories never truly end, they live forever in hearts that remember, in dreams that inspire. In courage that conquers all. Sleep now, sleep deep, and wake as heroes do, with strength renewed, and spirit bright. The tale is told, the journey complete. Rest in peace, until dawn breaks again.